Imagine buying a cabin by a lake for your retirement, a place that's been standing since 1962. And then some HOA president shows up at your door demanding $2,500 in initiation fees for a property that was never part of their community, for land they have zero legal claim to. She actually told me that all lakefront properties belong to her association. No documentation, no deed, just her word and a stack of fake paperwork. When I refused to pay, they blocked my road. They put up cameras pointing at my cabin. They threatened to remove me from my own property. I spent 30 years as an architect reading property deeds and zoning laws. They picked the wrong guy to push around. What happens next? You won't believe it. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I found the cabin through an estate sale listing buried in a county newspaper. A 2-acre lakefront property on Pine Lake, built in 1962, owned by the same family for 6 decades. The photos showed weathered cedar siding, a stone fireplace, and a wooden dock stretching into water so clear you could see the bottom. I drove 3 hours to see it in person. Before I even stepped inside, I knew this was where I would spend the rest of my life. I made an offer that same afternoon. The estate was accepted within 48 hours. Drop a comment below telling me where you're watching from today. Because what started as a dream retirement would turn into a battle I never expected to fight. After 30 years as an architect reviewing property documents, I had learned to check everything before signing. The deed was clean. 2 acres with metes and bounds dating to the original 1962 survey. No easements except a county road along the northern boundary. No covenants, no restrictions, no homeowners association anywhere in the chain of title. This land was mine, free and clear. The first week was everything I had imagined. Mist rising off the lake at dawn, coffee on the dock while herons fished in the shallows. Afternoons spent repairing the cabin with my own hands. No meetings, no deadlines, just water against the shore and wind through the pines. On the 3rd day, I noticed something strange. A wooden stake had appeared at the edge of my property, roughly 50 feet from the southeast corner where my land met the adjacent forest. It was new, fresh-cut pine, driven into the ground within the past day or two. No survey flag, no markings. Just a bare stake standing where nothing had stood before. I photographed it and noted the GPS coordinates. That afternoon, I walked the entire perimeter. I found 2 more stakes. One was positioned approximately 120 feet north of the first, near the tree line. The third stood at the northeast corner, exactly where my property boundary turned west toward the lake. All 3 formed a line along the eastern edge of my land. All 3 were unmarked, and all 3 had appeared without explanation. The 4th day brought the white SUV. I was on the dock watching the sunset when I heard tires on gravel. The vehicle had stopped on the dirt road skirting my northern boundary, through the trees. I could make out the logo on the door. Pinewood Shores Security. 2 figures sat inside. One raised binoculars to his face. They watched me for nearly 15 minutes before driving away. I noted the time, the vehicle description, and the direction they departed. That night, I checked every window and door before sleeping. I walked the perimeter with a flashlight, looking for fresh tire tracks or footprints near the cabin. Nothing. The ground around my front door was undisturbed, soft dirt and pine needles, exactly as I had left it that morning. The next day, I woke at dawn and checked again. The dirt was no longer undisturbed. Someone had approached the cabin during the night. A single set of footprints led from the tree line to my front door and back again. Tucked under the door was a folded piece of paper. Welcome to Pinewood Shores Community. Please contact the HOA office at your earliest convenience to complete your membership registration. There was a phone number, an address, and a small map. My cabin was marked with a red circle. I knew about Pinewood Shores. The development was built in 2005 on former agricultural land adjacent to the lake. Neat rows of identical houses with manicured lawns and strict architectural guidelines. But Pinewood Shores was on the other side of the forest. Their community ended where the trees began. My cabin predated their existence by 43 years. I pulled out the survey map from the county recorder. The boundaries were unmistakable. My property sat on a separate parcel, legally distinct, with no connection whatsoever to the Pinewood Shores subdivision. Yet someone had placed stakes on my land. Someone had watched me through binoculars, and someone had crept to my door in darkness to deliver a note claiming I belonged to them. That evening, I returned to the southeast corner of my property, near the old pine tree. I found what I was looking for. A brass survey marker is partially obscured by decades of fallen needles. The inscription read, County Survey, 1960. 2 years before my cabin was built. 45 years before Pinewood Shores existed. I cleaned the marker and photographed it from multiple angles. Then I walked to each of the 3 wooden stakes and measured their distance from the official boundary. The first stake sat 12 feet inside my property line. The second, 15 feet. The third, nearly 20. They were not marking my boundary. They were claiming territory that did not belong to them. I returned to the cabin and opened my laptop. I created a new folder named Pinewood Incidents. Entry 1, photographs of the stakes with GPS coordinates and measurements. Entry 2, description of the surveillance vehicle. Entry 3, the footprints and the note. I did not know how deep this would go, but I knew enough to start keeping records. People who stake claims on land that does not belong to them rarely stop at wooden posts and friendly notes. They came on day 6. I was on the porch replacing a rotted board when a black Mercedes pulled up the dirt road and parked beside my truck. 2 people stepped out. The woman was in her early 50s, dressed in business casual that looked expensive and deliberately chosen to project authority. The man was younger, thicker, and wearing a polo shirt with the Pinewood Shores security logo on the chest. The same logo I had seen on the SUV. They walked toward my cabin like they owned the ground beneath their feet. I set down my hammer and waited. The woman smiled as she approached, but her eyes were already cataloging everything. The condition of the cabin. The truck is in the driveway. The dock extends into the lake. She was not here to welcome me. She was here to assess what I had and determine how to take it. Mr. Ortiz, I'm Elizabeth James, President of the Pinewood Shores Homeowners Association. This is Victor Haynes, our head of community security. We wanted to personally welcome you to the neighborhood. She extended her hand. I shook it briefly. Her grip was firm, practiced, the kind of handshake people use when they want you to know they are in charge. Victor Haynes did not offer his hand. He stood slightly behind Elizabeth, arms crossed, scanning my property with the slow deliberation of someone making mental notes. I noticed a camera clipped to his belt. I appreciate the visit, I said, keeping my voice neutral. But I should mention that I'm not part of your community. My property predates your HOA by more than 40 years. Elizabeth's smile did not waver. Of course. We're aware of the history. But all lakefront properties in this area fall under our association's umbrella. It's part of the master development plan. She opened the leather folder she was carrying and handed me a thick packet of papers. This is your welcome package. Inside you'll find a copy of our CCNRs, our Community Standards Handbook, and the necessary forms for membership registration. I flipped through the documents while she continued talking. A copy of the Pinewood Shores Covenants, Conditions, and Restrictions, an invoice for an initiation fee of $2,500, another invoice for annual dues of $1,800, a list of architectural standards governing paint colors, fence heights, dock specifications, and landscaping requirements. My dock, according to their handbook, violated at least 3 regulations. You'll also notice the fee schedule, Elizabeth said. The initiation fee is due within 30 days, and annual dues are collected each January. Given that you've already moved in, we can prorate your first year. I looked up from the documents. These CC&Rs require property owner signatures to be binding. I don't see any signature from the previous owners of this cabin, or from any owner, going back to 1962. Elizabeth's smile flickered. The association was formed in 2005. Properties that existed before that date were grandfathered into the community through the master plan agreement. I shook my head. A master plan is an internal development document. It has no legal authority over parcels that were never part of the original subdivision. My deed has no covenant restrictions. My parcel number isn't listed anywhere in your CC&Rs. I checked before I bought the property. Victor Haynes shifted his weight. Elizabeth's expression hardened. Just slightly. Mr. Ortiz, all lakefront properties share common amenities. Lake access, road maintenance, security patrols. You benefit from these services whether you acknowledge it or not. Membership ensures everyone pays their fair share. I set the packet down on the porch railing. The lake is public water, managed by the state. The road to my cabin is a county easement, maintained by county taxes I already pay. And I didn't ask for your security patrols. I paused. In fact, I'd prefer if your vehicles stopped parking on the public road to watch my property through binoculars. Elizabeth's composure cracked, just for a moment. Surprise, then something colder. Victor Haynes's hand moved to the camera on his belt. We conduct routine patrols for the safety of all residents, Elizabeth said smoothly, including those who haven't yet formalized their membership. She reached into her folder and produced one more document. This is a formal notice of non-compliance. Your dock does not meet community specifications. Your cabin exterior has not been approved by the Architectural Review Committee. You have 30 days to bring your property into compliance or face additional assessments. She held out the paper. I did not take it. I'm not a member of your association. Your architectural committee has no jurisdiction over my property, and I won't be paying any fees for an organization I never joined. Elizabeth set the paper on the railing beside the welcome packet. I suggest you reconsider, Mr. Ortiz. We have ways of dealing with non-compliant residents. The process can be quite uncomfortable. She turned and walked back to her Mercedes. Victor Haynes lingered for a moment, raising his camera to photograph my cabin, my dock, and my truck. Then he followed her. I watched them drive away, memorizing the license plate, the moment they were out of sight. I pulled out my phone. I had been recording the entire conversation. This state allowed one-party consent for audio recordings. Every word Elizabeth James had spoken was now documented. That evening, I accessed the county recorder's database and downloaded the complete title history for my parcel. No HOA covenant had ever been recorded against my property. No master plan agreement. Nothing connects my land to Pinewood Shores in any legal capacity. I added Elizabeth's documents to my evidence folder, along with the recording and a detailed summary of our conversation. Entry 4. Entry 5. Entry 6. They thought they could intimidate me into compliance. They had no idea that every threat they made was another piece of evidence I would eventually use against them. The escalation came faster than I expected. On day 8, a large sign appeared at the entrance to the dirt road leading to my cabin. Pinewood Shores, private community, residents only beyond this point. Professionally made, mounted on 2 metal posts driven deep into fresh concrete. It had not been there when I drove to town that morning. I photographed it and called the county road department. A clerk confirmed the road was a public easement. No private entity had authority to restrict access, because this was the 3rd complaint they had received about Pinewood Shores blocking county roads. They dispatched an inspector that same afternoon. By day 10, the county had removed both the sign and its posts. But when I returned from town that evening, a heavy wooden gate stretched across the road, secured with a padlock and chain. Private property, authorized vehicles only, violators will be towed. Jan. Fresh tire tracks from a heavy vehicle led from the barrier back toward the Pinewood development. Sawdust and wood shavings littered the ground around the posts. They had been waiting for the county crew to leave. I sat in my truck, engine idling, staring at the obstruction. My hands tightened on the steering wheel until my knuckles went white. Every instinct screamed at me to floor the accelerator and smash through. It would have been satisfying. It would have been exactly what they wanted. An act of property damage they could use against me. I forced my grip to relax, put the truck in reverse, took the long way around through a fire access trail that added 40 minutes to my drive. The next morning, I filed another complaint. The county removed the barrier again by sunset. It was back. Same padlock, same sign. But this time, Victor Haynes stood beside it, arms crossed, watching my approach with a smirk. I stopped my truck and stepped out. My phone was already recording video in my shirt pocket. "Mr. Ortiz," Victor said, "this is HOA property. You need a resident pass to proceed." I kept my voice level. "This is a county road. You have no authority here." Victor shrugged and pulled out his phone. 5 minutes later, the black Mercedes appeared. Elizabeth James stepped out, her expression a careful blend of sympathy and steel. "Mr. Ortiz, I'm sorry it's come to this, but non-compliant residents create problems for the entire community. We have a responsibility to maintain order." I gestured toward the barrier. "This is illegal. The county will remove it again." Elizabeth smiled. "And we'll replace it again. This could go on indefinitely, or it could end today." She stepped closer, lowering her voice. $2,500, that's all it takes. Think of it as an investment in peaceful coexistence. The audacity was breathtaking. She was openly admitting to harassment, framing extortion as a compromise. "Are you threatening me?" I asked. Elizabeth's smile widened. "I'm offering a solution. The alternative is complicated. Legal fees, property disputes, the stress of fighting an organization with resources you can't match." She paused. "We've done this before. Mr. Ortiz, we always win." I could feel my pulse in my temples. 30 years of professional discipline kept my response measured. "I'll consider your offer." Then I got back in my truck and took the fire trail home. Elizabeth watched me go, still smiling. That evening, I discovered the cameras, 2 of them, mounted on county utility poles along the public road, just outside my property line. The poles belonged to the electric company, not Pinewood Shores. Installing equipment on them without authorization was a separate violation. Both cameras were angled directly at my cabin and dock. Fresh drill marks scarred the wood around each mounting bracket. I photographed them with a telephoto lens, documenting serial numbers and installation hardware. My email held another surprise. A message from Pinewood Shores Legal Department had arrived at 3:47 p.m. The letter demanded immediate payment of all outstanding fees plus a $500 compliance assessment penalty. Failure to pay within 14 days would result in a lien on my property. The signature line read, "Associate Counsel," with no bar number, no law firm name, and no verifiable credentials. I had seen enough fraudulent legal documents in my career to recognize one immediately. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with everything I had collected spread before me. Photographs of stakes, barriers, and cameras, recordings of threats, fraudulent invoices and fake legal notices. GPS coordinates and timestamps create an irrefutable timeline. Every piece of evidence is cataloged and backed up to 3 separate locations. They were building a case of intimidation against me. They had no idea I was building a federal case against them. I pulled out my laptop and began researching property attorneys who specialized in HOA disputes and boundary conflicts. Tomorrow, I will stop playing defense. Elizabeth James had told me they always won. She was about to learn that she had never faced someone who spent 30 years mastering the details that win battles like this. I spent 3 days at the county recorder's office, not because I needed 3 days, but because I wanted to build an airtight case. The deed and boundary research confirmed what I already knew. My property had never been part of Pinewood Shores, but the business records revealed something I had not expected. Pinewood Shores Development LLC had been formed in 2003 by a group of investors. One name caught my attention: Elizabeth Mitchell. I cross-referenced it with marriage and divorce filings in the county database. Elizabeth Mitchell had become Elizabeth James after a brief marriage in 2008. The signature on the LLC formation documents matched the signature on the fraudulent invoices she had handed me. Same distinctive loop on the capital E. Same sharp angle on the final S. Elizabeth was not just the HOA president. She was a co-owner of the development company that had created Pinewood Shores. If my lakefront cabin could be absorbed into the HOA, the entire community would gain legitimate waterfront access. Property values would increase. Her investment would grow. This had never been about compliance. It was about money. I called the county sheriff's office and spoke with a deputy about the harassment. He listened politely and told me what I expected. "It sounds like a civil matter, sir. Unless there's an immediate threat, there's not much we can do." I thanked him and hung up. He was not wrong. But obstruction of a public road was a misdemeanor. Trespassing was a misdemeanor. Extortion was a felony. I just needed the right person to connect the dots. I found Diane Chavez through a legal referral service. 15 years of litigating HOA overreach cases. A reputation for being relentlessly thorough. I sent her my complete documentation that evening. She called back the next morning. "This is worse than textbook overreach," she said. "They have zero legal standing. The letters they've sent are fraudulent. That fake legal notice alone could be grounds for criminal charges." I authorized her to send a cease and desist letter demanding the removal of all barriers, signs, and surveillance equipment within 7 days. She also filed a complaint with the State Real Estate Commission against Elizabeth's license. Their response came 48 hours later. Not compliance, escalation. A new letter accused me of damaging HOA property and demanded $1,500. Diane's assessment was brief. "They're building our case for us." That night, at 11:23 p.m., my motion sensors triggered an alert. The cabin was silent except for the soft hum of the refrigerator. Outside, wind stirred the pines. I checked the security feed. A figure moved through the trees at the edge of my property, flashlight beam cutting erratic patterns through the darkness. Victor Haynes. He emerged into the clearing near my dock, his breath visible in the cold air. I watched him examine the dock structure, take photographs with his phone, then walk toward the southeast corner where the original wooden stakes had appeared weeks ago. He pulled something from his jacket pocket, a wooden stake. He knelt and drove it into my land. The timestamp read 11:31 p.m. His face was clearly visible in the infrared footage. Criminal trespass. Documented and undeniable. I called Diane first thing the next morning. "Combined with everything else, this is enough," she said. "It's time to end this." I asked her how. "We know their pattern. They escalate every time we push back, according to Victor's schedule, which I obtained through a public records request on their security contracts. Saturday is their designated enforcement day. Elizabeth will almost certainly attempt another action." She paused. "I've already spoken with Deputy Robert Chavez at the sheriff's office. No relation to me, in case you're wondering. He's agreed to be present at your property on Saturday morning as a witness. If they attempt to trespass or obstruct the road again, they'll be committing crimes in front of law enforcement." I asked why a deputy would agree to that. "Because I sent him the video of Victor on your property at 11 p.m., and the fake legal letters, and the pattern of road obstruction. He's very interested in what Elizabeth James has been doing." I spent the next 2 days preparing. I organized every piece of evidence into a clear timeline. Photographs of the stakes with GPS coordinates. Videos of the barriers. Recordings of Elizabeth's threats. The fraudulent invoices and fake legal notices. Victor's midnight trespass. The LLC documents prove Elizabeth's financial interest, every piece connected to the next, forming an unbroken chain of harassment, fraud, and criminal conduct. I made 3 copies of everything, one for Diane, one for the sheriff's department. One was stored off-site in case anything happened to the originals. Saturday morning arrived gray and cold, mist rising from the lake just as it had on my first day at the cabin. Deputy Chavez arrived at 7:30, parking his cruiser out of sight behind my garage. Diane arrived 10 minutes later. We sat on my porch, drinking coffee, watching the dirt road that led from Pinewood Shores to my property. Elizabeth James thought she always won. She thought I would surrender like everyone else. In about 2 hours, she was going to learn exactly how wrong she was. They arrived at 9:47 a.m. A black Mercedes, followed by a white pickup truck with the Pinewood Shores security logo. Elizabeth James stepped out first, carrying her leather folder. Victor Haynes emerged from the pickup with 2 contracted laborers. They unloaded tools from the truck bed. A crowbar, a sledgehammer, bolt cutters. They were not here to talk. They were here to dismantle my dock. Diane and I stood on the porch, watching them approach. Deputy Chavez remained out of sight behind the garage. Elizabeth stopped at the edge of my property and called out across the clearing. "Mr. Ortiz, your dock violates Pinewood Shores architectural standards. We are authorized to remove the non-compliant structure." Diane stepped forward. "I'm Mr. Ortiz's attorney. Any attempt to damage structures on this land constitutes criminal trespass. I advise you to reconsider." Elizabeth's smile hardened into cold calculation. "Proceed with the removal," she told Victor. He walked toward the dock and raised the crowbar. "Deputy Chavez," Diane called out, "I think you've seen enough." The cruiser door opened. Deputy Chavez stepped around the garage, hand resting on his belt. "Sheriff's Department, everyone, stop." Victor froze. The contractors immediately stepped back. Elizabeth spun around, genuine surprise breaking through her composure. "Deputy, this is a civil matter between the HOA and a non-compliant resident." Deputy Chavez walked toward her slowly. "Ma'am, I've been observing for 30 minutes. I've also reviewed video of Mr. Haynes trespassing on this property at 11 p.m. last Tuesday." He stopped in front of her. "Based on what I've witnessed, there are potential charges under investigation: criminal trespass, extortion, obstruction of a public road. I strongly advise your people to put down those tools." Victor dropped the crowbar. The contractors walked back to the truck. Elizabeth stood alone, her facade finally crumbling. "We were acting on legitimate community concerns." "If there's been any misunderstanding," Deputy Chavez cut her off, "I'll be forwarding my report to the district attorney's office." The investigation took 6 weeks, faced with documented harassment, fraudulent legal notices, and the trespass video. The HOA's legal counsel advised immediate settlement. Elizabeth was charged with harassment. Victor was charged with criminal trespass. The State Real Estate Commission suspended Elizabeth's license, Pinewood Shores. HOA settled for $25,000 in damages and a formal apology to every resident. Elizabeth resigned. Victor was terminated. The cameras came down. The barriers never returned. A month later, I sat on my dock at sunset, watching the mist rise across Pine Lake. No white SUVs, no cameras, no strangers planting stakes on my land. An elderly neighbor had told me Elizabeth tried this with 3 other families over the years. They all surrendered. I was the first one who fight back and win. Some battles are won by those who refuse to stop fighting. I took a sip of coffee and watched the stars appear. This cabin, this view, this peace, Worth every moment.